Welcome to the Week in IndyCar, recorded live, but I'm putting this up a little bit after, from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I am staring at a vision of Norwegian sexiness. IndyCar analyst, play-by-play, driver insider, pit lane reporter, Anders Krohn. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing glorious on this beautiful, gloomy afternoon at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Yeah, hoping it doesn't look like this for race day.
And sitting next to him, equally as gorgeous, that would be a super tall drink of pole-winning race engineer Ben Bretzman from Team Penske, Simon Pagenaud, sorcerer, conjurer of speed. How are you doing, brother?
Good, very good. Actually, it's been a great couple weeks so far. So thanks for having me, and just excited. It's been a good couple weeks. Got one more big one to check off here.
Any more truth to the rumor that Team Penske is requesting all races to be held on the Indy GP and the 500 based on how this month's going for you, Ben?
We'd take the Indy GP for sure. This has been amazing. It's been a good run. Simon deserves it, and all the guys do actually. So it's been good so far.
Say thank you quickly to our partners at Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers that do genuinely make this possible, and this month as well. Our friends at Toronto Motorsports who come up with all these crazy cartoon characters. They're going to be here Saturday, a one-day pop-up show at the Indy Memorabilia event behind the Pagoda where you can buy all kinds of stuff. There's a brand new Robin Miller shirt, which you can use to clean up oil stains on the driveway, all kinds of bad stuff. So definitely thank you to them. So the normal format for our show is the one we're going to stick with here, which is listener-driven. And I have to admit, this is kind of my perfect lineup. Monkey asking questions, definite sharp tool in terms of analysis and insider content, and a race engineer to help make us smarter, which you've done many times on the show before, Ben. So I am a fairly happy boy. Before we get to the first question, though, Anders kind of came up with what we think is the perfect tweak for next year's Indy Sunday qualifying program. So this year, we had I know they call it the last row shootout. I think we should just go with the dirt oval tradition of LCQ, last chance qualifying. Just call it what it is, pay homage to our roots. We have, at least this year, we had the LCQ first, followed by the Fast Nine. Who's going to be on the pole? What was your really awesome idea we need to sell to IndyCar for next year?
Well, I think really starting with the pole shootout should probably be the one, because I feel like the last chance qualifier, as you referred to, was so dramatic that not taking anything away from the pole shootout, but at that point you already know that one of these 9 drivers are going to be on pole, and that's certainly something to be celebrated. But when you have these potentially massive storylines of someone not even making the show, I feel like that probably overpowers it. So starting off with the Fast Nine, in my opinion, would probably help kind of give that the credit that it deserves, because I feel like we were still kind of stuck on the fact that last chance qualifying had just happened, and even though we just determined a pole winner, the overarching theme was still, I cannot believe Fernando Alonso's going home.
And even though you and Simon have been good friends for more than a decade, I will have to admit, as someone who needs to write and tell stories and think in dramatic terms, I did kind of look up from my holy crap, Hunko's just knocked out Fernando's story to go, oh, cool, Simon's on pole. Type. So, yeah, if we could kind of switch that up, then I think we could pay a little more attention to the really cool thing like Simon did and Team Penske did with your awesome Chevy Power on Sunday. Why don't we start off with our man Jordan Darwin, who always sends in great questions. He says, Ben, great job so far this month, and good luck at the 500. If you had to pick one driver inside Team Penske, not named Simon, and one outside Team Penske to win on Sunday, who would your picks be?
Inside, I'd pick Rick Mears.
Let me hand you a mic so you can drop it.
Inside, we've got 4 good cars, really good cars. Elio's honestly looked really strong in traffic running in particular. Joseph looked really strong yesterday. He's been kind of working his program up all week, and
he's been locked in this month.
Yeah, he's looked really good yesterday. Will's having a very normal month of May right now. You don't know really what he's got, and then all of a sudden he's fast in the race. So, that's a tough one. But if it's not Rick Mears outside of Simon, I'm going to pick Elio, honestly, because I just want to make some more history. outside of us, there's a bunch of guys we're watching. A bunch of guys we're keeping tabs on. Obviously, the Carpenter cars we know are fast. We're racing against them every year. So we're in. Ed knows how to drive around this place like nobody else. So we're watching those guys close. Rossi's looked strong as he has the last few years. I think it's going to be exciting, particularly as the temperatures look like they're not going to be as hot as last year. It's what you saw probably yesterday when the temperatures were cooler. It's going to be a lot like that. So it could be, with how close qualifying was, it could be just about anybody's race because it's going to be super tight, super tight.
I think, unlike maybe Monday's running where it was cool enough, downforce was up, and it looked like anybody could do anything, piggybacking on your comment, someone else asked me, I think yesterday, what do you think for race day? And if it is going to be that temperature's up, there is some additional downforce available this year through added gurneys, but we're not talking crazy. It just feels like if all those things play out, this is going to be a year where experience compared to a driver with a year or two who doesn't know all the things to expect it might be one of those veteran winning years plus car control again, where name some of the drivers, Alexander Rossi's, whose hands you actually can't see because they're moving so quickly it's impossible. I'm wondering if those two could be in there. What do you think, Anders?
I almost wonder if it could also fall into the hands of someone that goes in without preconceived notions. Someone that just kind of goes in with a blank slate and doesn't know what to anticipate, so therefore they maybe have a slightly more conservative approach early on. I could easily see it swinging that way as well, and especially with the new surface. I mean, I don't know what you guys are finding, but certainly looks like the track temp goes up so much more compared to ambient temp, and looks like the car's just sliding on top of the surface. So, man, it looks super tricky. So I'm wondering if maybe we should paint the entire track white so it doesn't soak up as much heat, and maybe we have some more grip.
No, there's a lot to that. If it's hot and the sun's out, it's going to be tricky. But the cars are so close. It's so tight. So there's guys that are out there doing some really interesting things. Some of the younger guys are, I still think they're going to learn the hard way at some point here. But it's going to be a good show regardless.
Santino Ferrucci really impressed me on Monday when he came and sat down and mentioned that during the 2-hour run, there was a segment where he was directly behind Elio. And he said Elio wouldn't let him by, and it wasn't because Elio was being pig-headed. He said Santino received the fact he was actually trying to teach him how to pass him. And no, I'm not going to let you do it here and hurt the two of us speed and performance-wise. So what I'm going to do is close the door and then show you where I would potentially open it up for you to get me into a different corner so that you can get your passing speed, but while I maintain my cornering speed and don't get trained by the people behind me. And I thought that was amazing on Elio, although I haven't confirmed that's what he actually did. Whether he did or didn't, I was really impressed that Santino, as a rook, this is his first ever oval race, was able to receive the fact in the car, like, oh, how cool. He's wanting to make sure the level of expectation for me to play among the veterans, so here's a little lesson, kid. I thought that was really cool. All right, let's go to... All right, that's the only question. We're done. Nobody likes us, apparently.
Perfect. Yeah, there you go.
This, I think, is easily the best thing that came in. This comes from J.D. Ellis. Don't know if you saw on over the weekend, I believe, Danica Patrick, one of your colleagues in NBC, now NBC Sports, was wearing some fine green slacks, I believe. So J.D. has asked, will Danica pull slacks from Al Cervix or Judge Smale's wardrobe for the Indy 500 broadcast, that being a Caddyshack reference, of course. So for those of us of a certain age, that's the best thing ever. Let's see. Let's go to Zach Smithengel, who says, Ben, did you and the team make huge gains in the car from May to account for the 22 Chevy's success, or has the car been strong all year and most of the trouble has just been down to bad luck in qualifying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that question probably encapsulates our last 18 months or so. Last year was tough. And it's like you hear all the things, just grumblings through the paddock, and Simon can't drive a low downforce car and all this stuff. And it gets really annoying because he finished in the top 5 the first 3 years of the DW12, which has less downforce than this. And me, as a race engineer, I'm actually have a street cred of being the most trimmed in road course races most of the time. So
that
had nothing to do with it. He can still drive the car. you just have to get a certain feel for a certain type of driver. It took a year of basically poking and prodding and what is this going to take to get to that point. And we kind of, off-season started, or this past off-season started, we took all the information we learned, sat down, okay, how are we going to fix this? And basically since the Sebring test in December, it's been pretty much game on.
Simon's been saying that all year long, even though I don't know if everyone has heard, but he's been saying from frickin' Monterey semi-wet private test, no, I'm good. Things are good. This is this is going to be a different year.
Yeah, and I think we knew basically in December he was fast, and then it was going to really be up to him to, okay, now I need to start building my race confidence back up, my qualifying confidence back up. And it's getting there every week now because he knows what he's got. He can push himself to the next level. And we got bit, obviously, twice this season already in qualifying. And some of that, one wasn't really our fault. One was we probably should have sent him earlier. We were just being greedy. But, it happens in the law of averages. It comes through eventually. So, I think we're ready to rip. He's really on it right now. So, and we've had to make certain changes to the car for him, and it's working. So, but that's Team Penske's been really good. I mean, we're not going to leave anybody behind is the big thing. So whatever it takes, everybody went to work. Not only just the 22 team, but our organization. How are we going to make this better? Because we can't it just hurts us to have one slower car compared to the other ones, one driver that can't help. And that's, ever since I've been at Team Penske, that's been the biggest thing is our drivers are to that level, and they push each other to the next level. And so when all three of them are really at the A-plus level of any IndyCar driver out there, it's really amazing to watch. So, now that he's on it, I think it's really helping the overall team now go to the next level.
And you've, in your career, either been at a track when Simon was at a similar level, him coming up through Atlantics, then into Champ Car, then away, then back. But in your own career arc, Anders, I know you've seen Simon and rise. I've been fortunate to see most of that from the outside and, just as a friend, seeing him do some pretty amazing things. What comes to mind when you see someone like this who just had a crappy year last year? Just didn't seem to be, the car was on track, he was on track. They seem like they're in a bit of a fight, a bit of a domestic dispute. Yep. What comes to mind, having seen what he's done before and the ability to recover? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, having seen Simon, I don't know that I ever really had seen prior to last year a slump from him, because I think the job that he did with Schmidt-Peterson back in those days was pretty incredible. I mean, he took a team that was basically very unknown to becoming a known and a force to be reckoned with. So obviously the job that he did with DeFerrin in IMSA back in the day was tremendous, and his Atlantic days, I mean, you just kind of get the sense that this is a superstar, and I'm so impressed with him because I could very easily see someone kind of going off the rails there and losing kind of faith in themselves, losing faith in the people around them when you try all that you can, but the results aren't coming. And so to have that kind of mental fortitude to kind of go through a full year of essentially just getting punched down, but to then come back the way that he has now has been very incredible. And I think it's probably, you'll know this a lot better, but it's probably going to make him a lot stronger to have that setback, because now he probably knows himself even more than he had a year ago, right?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is, I've watched him. I've been with him now for 10 years, right? And his thing, you got to know how to use him. You originally had to use him a certain way. He wasn't like a Joseph or a Graham who was going to elbow his way through the field, right? But surprisingly, because of how qualifying was going last year, he learned how to do that. So if you watched any of the races this year or even last year, he was passing lots of cars, which is not typical Simon Pagenaud. So he learned something out of it, right?
Right.
So, which I think you're right. At the end of the day, he's going to come out stronger on it.
And I remember one particular article. I can't remember if it was you that wrote it, Marshall, but I think it was after the championship in 2016, where he said, if I get the car a certain way, I can do some pretty incredible things with my feet and what that is. And from my eyes, having seen him drive, it looks to me like he needs maybe a rear end that's a little bit more stuck, and he does the job with the pedals on the way into the corner.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, with the amount of aero that you lose on the way in with this new aero kit, is that difficult, or is my assumption completely off there?
No, it's close. Surprisingly enough, though, it's not so much. You'll laugh, but he probably drives the loosest street course, road course car on our team now. But he's able to do that because of how good his feet are. He can control the platform of the car. He can control the pitch sensitivity of the car. This car is almost twice as pitch sensitive as the Aero Kit's cars
right.
were. So it was a big step to try to get used to that for all the drivers. But he's so good at using the brake pedal. That's where his strength is. Whereas, like, Will's got the most amazing hands I've ever seen before in my life. He can catch anything because his hands are so fast.
Right.
But Simon uses his feet to control the car, keep the platform controlled. He's amazing at it. His big thing was he just didn't have a lot of feel for what the race car was doing. He didn't have any the tactile sensation of what the tire is doing versus what the car is doing wasn't there.
Wasn't talking to him the way that he needed.
Yeah, and he won't go to the next level of 9/10 if he doesn't know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
That was his biggest issue. So we had to go kind of recollect ourselves and what do we need to do to get the feel of the tires, essentially, particularly the rear tires. And it's not so much a thing of it being loose, but just knowing where the rear tires are at.
Yeah, that it's okay for it to move.
Exactly. If you don't know the capacity of the tire, you as a driver will never push beyond to it, essentially. So,
you're going to get, in that scenario, in your mind, there is a belief you're going to get bit.
Exactly.
And so why reach your hand out that far when you know there's a strike coming? It's easier to keep just a little bit of distance to avoid
100%.
that. And it's the same thing here where you mentioned power. I see this with Rossi a lot. It's been Dixie's formula all along. When I was doing coaching in Indy Lights in the 90s, I would just refer to it as a lap-by-lap controlled crash among the Greg Moores and some of the other guys who were just on a different planet.
Yeah.
Everyone driving the same car, truly spec, even more spec than what we have in IndyCar today. So what's the differentiator? Same everything. You're seeing these guys, I don't believe there are any women, so that is, I guess, also correct in terms of gender, but you were seeing these guys, the best of the best in Indy Lights then. Tony Kanaan was one of them as well, where just observing, especially from overhead in some places, and you see the car isn't necessarily doing Tokyo Drift the whole time, but from inside the car you would think that they were just spinning it, the steering wheel left and spinning it. It's this flurry, and you go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Outside you couldn't necessarily pick up all those things, but once you see the work in the cockpit, you realize there's extra human stuff going on, and boom, look at the lap time.
Well, and I wonder if part of that can be back to his Formula Renault days, because the best driver I ever drove against from a pedal perspective was Tristan Vautier, who both of them drove Michelin tires in a Formula Renault car, and I know a lot of that had to do with brake release and how you control the car on the way into the corner. So wouldn't be surprised, with the experience that he got there, that's part of the reason why he is so pedal sensitive.
Yeah.
And a very load sensitive tire, the Michelin anyway.
Anders with a Tristan Vautier example. I'm just saying, you're killing it here. And we're just going to actually continue on that theme with John Hollinger, who says, for Anders, and I've told this to you, and I hope you have heard this from many, many people, he says, your contribution to Indy 500 practice coverage was, all caps, the best racing commentary I've ever heard. How long until you're in the booth full time? I can answer that a little bit. We're currently trying to figure out who we need to take out. Just get him in a headlocks. I mean, PT's a burly guy. I think I could, I know I could take him. But, Townie's kind of pretty. We don't want to lump him up. Lee, he's just a nice guy. So that's the problem. We can't find someone we really just... Anyways, I know if you had the answer to that, you wouldn't be sitting here because you'd be too important, because you'd have a better job than sitting with my monkey ass.
Well, I guess first off, I appreciate the sentiment, and you're probably wrong. You must be listening to the wrong person. But I am very fortunate in that I do have a full-time role during race weekends with IndyCar Radio. They've been fantastic, and again, for me, it's kind of as the fanboy that I am, and very unsuccessful driver, to be able to talk about my passion, I guess it's just incredible. And then obviously get to do the NBC stuff for Indy Lights. So I feel like regardless the outlet, every race weekend I get to talk about what I love the most and get to pretend to know what I'm talking about, and people are sometimes buying it. So
hashtag fake it till you make it, the Anders Krohn story. John also asks another question. We have a ton of questions, and we have a limited amount of time with you guys, so we're going to try and get through as many as we can. John also asks about backup cars and this scenario where we saw 4 or 5 I've almost lost track of how many cars crashed, of teams having to go to backup cars, the disparity in preparation time between the various teams, and is coming back to kind of the central question of, so in the name of cost saving, teams can only have 1 engine per entry? Different than the old days. The earliest job offer I ever had was in 1990 in kart to be a mechanic on one of the Porsche factory team's backup cars. That's how good I was, just so we're being clear here. Not the race car. No, he's in the back of the trailer there just polishing stuff. Offered $30,000 for the year. They shut down at the end of the year, so I'm glad I didn't take that. But back in the day where, hey, car crashes, guy blows up a motor, boom, you're rolling the other one out within 5 minutes. Just thoughts on this recent policy, this modern era policy where 1 engine per entry. Realize here that teams will have multiple entries per driver, but they're just calling it a single thing. Thoughts about that? Because it helps manufacturers limit pool size. So instead of having 40 or 50 engines in a pool, in theory might have to have 100 if you have to keep 2 cars staffed. Thoughts about that? Good, bad? Does it help?
I think, there's a lot of sides to that. I think the manufacturer's side is tough. They can't handle much more than what they're doing right now. That's why they're working hard to bring the third manufacturer in, because they're at capacity. And if we keep wanting to have bumping, we want all this excitement, we want all these 36, 37, 39 cars every year, you're pushing the engine guys as hard as they can be pushed. There's literally not enough guys that they have to operate as an engine tuner for each car if there's that many more entries, much less turn engines around from the early part of the season to prep them. So I think from that side of things, it's really difficult. Those guys have budgets too, just as the teams do, and I think it's hard for them to have as much stuff ready as that. Right? I'm with you. Like when we used to be in buy our own engine world, we'd be sitting there with engines in both cars and had proper T cars, and that's how I started at Indianapolis. And it was you'd actually have a T car that you'd go run, but at the same time, you had 3.5 weeks. If you wanted to spend a day working on a T car, you could go run the T car. Now we're here. You actually look at it. Practice time is very, very limited. Yeah. So from the team standpoint, if you have an incident, it's really difficult. Like you put a lot of stress on your system because you have very limited track time nowadays here. So I see both sides of that situation. I don't know. It's from the team standpoint, you just got to be as prepared as you can be. That's the guys that have been here. Whether it's the Schmitz, whether it's Team Penske, whether it's Ganassi, we these teams know what it takes to be prepared. I mean, any of the major teams are going to be able to do what Schmidt did. The smaller teams, it's a lot harder situation.
And I'm only 2 days overdue in writing that story after speaking with the awesome Billy Vincent, a friend to all of us, about how they were able to turn Hinch's car around in 2.5 hours. So I'll get that out here shortly. And just to close on the engine availability standpoint, I don't know if folks truly understand how on the financial rev limiter Chevy and Honda happen to be. They spend a lot of money in and out of the actual paddock, meaning sponsoring races and hospitality and all, you name it. They spend a lot of money. And, of course, it's always if you're spending, pick whatever number, $1 billion, what's 1.1 billion? Well, regardless, just realize that with the average manufacturer having an engine pool in the 40 to 50 range, you'd be asking them to double that. and effectively doubling their annual commitment. And that's where you have manufacturers raise their hand and say, awesome being here. Thanks for inviting me to the party. Invite me when you want to tone things down a little bit.
And I think that's kind of my point. I'm always for, as long as it doesn't ruin the racing, I'm always for whatever lowers the financial threshold to enable other teams to come in. Because if that was twice the amount, then eventually that part of that cost gets passed on to the teams, which in the case of a Juncos Racing or someone like that, then they're not even in it. So then we're back to trying to fill 33 cars as opposed to, now being oversubscribed. So there's definitely that consideration to be made as well. And personally, I think the way it's done right now, it arguably only makes the show even better, because now the teams have to hustle to get the car moved, get the engine moved over, and it doesn't seem quite so lopsided for a top tier team compared to a second tier team, if you will.
Well, let's go to a question that I didn't do my research on this, so I apologize, and hopefully you guys, I know you guys as well, this will be a fresh one to you. Maybe we can scramble. Something about a team named McLaren that supposedly struggled here. Don't know if you've heard of this.
Yeah.
Well, possibly so. All kidding aside, Howard Bennett, and this one's for all of us, says, following on from McLaren's confusion about ride height settings, which we saw Sunday morning during the LCQ practice session they showed up 9 minutes late for, I wonder, is there a standardization on the DW12 chassis in terms of shocks, engine components, fittings, etc., to either U.S. imperial or metric measurement? He says, presumably everyone in the U.S. still works in imperial, but with a European design and some vital fittings sourced from Europe, where metric is standard, how does all this work together? It's a great question, because as we read, at least the answer given by Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren, there was confusion as to Andretti's recommendations. Granted, well, I should back things up a little bit. For those who aren't aware, Saturday night, while struggling for speed, the McLaren team struck a deal with Andretti Technologies, not Andretti Autosport, although I believe Andretti Autosport owns Andretti Technologies. But anyways, did a deal with Andretti Technologies to make use of their dampers in their attempt to get in the field on Sunday. Maybe you can share just some insights here, Ben. I know this wouldn't be giving away any secrets, but it's one thing to receive dampers. It's another thing, say, to receive a setup sheet from someone. Where things might confuse me a little bit as a former mechanic is whether imperial standard or otherwise, the crew doing setups on a car should be able to measure, receive expectations for what the amount of compression for the overall damper before it smashes into one another happens under compression. I would think this would be something that could be mapped out pretty quickly, but the answer given by Zach Brown was confusion over units. Does that pass sniff test? Not asking you to judge, but have you heard of such a thing before?
Might. I mean, heck, we shot something to Mars and missed because of units, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't the first time that's happened.
Bretzman, you're the best.
So I can see it happening. I mean, all teams throughout the paddock do just general setup differently. The units they use are differently. The just general nomenclature they use is different. Something like that could easily happen if you're not paying attention.
But you would have thought they would have had Andretti crew in there to make sure that this was assembled.
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to be biased here. I don't know how. If I was Chevrolet, I wouldn't want that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't know how that works. But you would think something like that, or someone would just sit down and try to actually explain the whole process, right? Because teams set cars up differently. There's teams put, where they measure ride height is sometimes different between teams. How they set, third gaps is different between teams. There's a lot of things that are different. People run different pin heights on dampers. People do a lot of different things differently. It could be spring heights, could be anything, but you could understand it all, but you have to sit down and make sure all the bases are covered, because you can easily get it wrong. Who knows? Maybe they just didn't take the time. At the end of the day, they put themselves in a stressful situation Saturday night, and you're asking everybody to, you've got however many hours to get all this stuff converted over and to a completely different package in a completely different realm of where you've been. If you're not paying attention, you could easily get something wrong.
We're going to stay with you, Ben. Another pressing question from Todd Michaels. Wants you to confirm. He says he's fairly certain Ben Bretzman has consumed more ice cream than any other engineer in the IndyCar paddock. Have you been able to validate this?
That's probably true. It's a unconfirmed rumor.
Okay,
but it's probably true.
What flavor?
Is that person named Ben Bretzman supposedly fond of?
Anything with peanut butter.
Anything
chocolate peanut butter. Oh yeah, that's awesome. It's the best.
Bubblegum peanut butter?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd throw up. And I'm a fat guy. I love ice cream. All right, let's go to our man, Anders. You got a question here from Andrew C., who says, I've never really had the time to watch the Freedom 100, but I've seen highlights and the crazy finishes. What's the story going into this year's race that would make me watch? I have NBC Sports Gold, so access isn't an issue.
Yep, and also it will be live on NBCSN, so not on NBC Gold. So that means free for everyone to watch. So that is good news. But
if you want to send us $50 to watch NBCSN,
that would
Andrew,
work.
we
that
won't
would work.
argue
Just
at
mail
all.
it to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yes.
Attention, Marshall Pruitt and Anders, and we'll split it 50-50 or 60-40. I need a bit more than you. But
is that imperial split
yes.
or metric split? Okay.
Metric.
All right,
metric,
just making sure, man.
Norway,
Come
on. What was the question? No, the Freedom 100 I think is just so fantastic because to me it's almost like the cross between an Indy 500 and like a Talladega NASCAR race. In that it's just
love it.
It's usually 3 wide the entire way, and especially now starting last year they tuned down the horsepower a bit so they suck up to each other a little bit better in the draft, and it's basically just 40 laps of these drivers trying to prove that they deserve to be in the Indy 500, and more often than not resulting in some pretty crazy incidents. And you've seen 3 wide finishes, you've seen a 4 wide finish, and more so than that, I think it's just you see the hunger level in these drivers wanting to prove themselves. There's no pit stops, there's no chance to make up for lost time, so you just see these drivers go 10/10 the entire race weekend. And I certainly know when I did it, it honestly, for me at the time, felt like I was doing the Indy 500. It was that important to me, and I couldn't care less about a championship. I couldn't care less about anything else. The only thing I cared about was I'm going to win this race.
There are
and then
two.
I crashed. But anyway,
any win at the Speedway. Any win at Speedway is a good win.
There are 2 series that get the attention of IndyCar drivers and team owners in particular. One of them is little sporty car tin top things, the Global MX5 Cup. They're on a handful of schedules with IndyCar. Will Power will stop whatever he's doing and run straight up to wherever to watch him because it is just...
That race at Elkhart Lake is the best race of the year.
Yeah.
The MX5 Cup race at Elkhart Lake.
Not the best MX5 Cup race, but
no,
just
like
the best
race ever.
Yeah. And the Freedom 100 is the other one, where it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, you know that there is... You just go, thank goodness, this is only something that could be done by the young. Because those of us who've got a few years and miles on, like, nope.
Well,
nope.
And what's so funny is there's only 10 cars in the field, but literally after the start's gone, you don't even think about the fact that there's only 10 cars because the battle that you watch is so intense that you do not care how big. It could be 5 cars for all we care, and it would just be still an amazing race.
It's basically the sprint to the finish line for all 40 laps.
Yep.
This is really okay. Nope. Nope. Let's see. Where should we go next? I'll answer this one quickly. Ed Joris says, Marshall, how goes it with HPD and Andretti? Is that contract coming up with Rossi in the offering? Again, as I do often when I get these items for the Weekend IndyCar, Weekend Sports Cars, I go and ask, hey, Alexander, could you send me your contract so I can read through it, find out the options? Kidding aside, Ed, I don't know where that's at. I would be very surprised if there were such discussions coming into the month of May or during the month of May. This would seem like a time to focus. 2 quick things. Definitely know that there has been a desire privately. They haven't said it publicly, but we've pretty solid. There's a want to make it happen with HPD wanting to take a greater role in steering their favorite drivers. Making sure that if, say, an Alexander Rossi does want to go to a Team Penske, a Team Krohn, a Team Pruitt, he'd never do that. And instead of Alexander being a true free agent, someone who might actually be contracted to the brand, so the brand could then say, hey, by the way, bad boy, we're sending you over here. Good boy, we're sending you there. But wanting to hold on to talent. Other thing I would say is with a Colton Herta, which I hope we speak about here as we preview the race coming up on Sunday, qualifying 5th. I don't want to see Alexander Rossi leave Andretti Autosport. I don't like seeing the balance of power shift heavily in any one direction. But if he does choose to do that, I'm telling you, by the race, I am growing more confident that Colton's not going to be ready to fill Alexander's shoes this year, I would say, or even next. But by 2021, I think he might be filling those shoes, if not stretching them out a little bit. That kid, holy cow. So don't want Alexander to leave, but I have a feeling that Michael Andretti might have the phone number of someone who'd be pretty darn good to backfill in that car. Let's see. Let's go to Anders from Ben Cohen, who says, do you believe Chevy's apparent advantage in qualifying might trickle over into the race, or does race trim even the playing field out? He says, it was great meeting you, the live event before the Grand Prix. And he said that to me, not to you, so he doesn't like you. Sorry, I tried to lead you in like you were saying that to you. What do you think, though?
Oh, that's a good question, and I feel like I've picked so many people's brains about what, and no one will give me a straight answer to it. And,
I've said Lotus. Lotus is going to be whooping some butt on Sunday.
I honestly feel like if the temperatures are hot again, it's going to be a very, very level playing field, and drivability and traffic management is going to be the single biggest thing. I keep going back to Rossi's race last year, going from 32nd to 4th. He, had things fallen a little bit differently during the course of the race. He could have very well won it. I think, obviously, that there was a distinct advantage from a Chevy perspective, but I know that also has a lot to do with temperature, humidity, all those things. So I think until we have a true picture of what the conditions are going to do on race day, I don't know if we'll truly know. And I feel like every year we go in with this preconceived notion of this manufacturer is going to be dominant, and then the other one does something special. So it tends to flip-flop every year. So I don't know, Ben, if you have any nuggets of info for us on that.
So of the dyno sheet that we know Ilmor just hands you.
I just compared them both yesterday, actually. No,
and then you got all the Honda ones, too, because you wouldn't ask, and they gave them to you, 100%. And you compared.
Yeah, it was amazing to see. No, it's tight. Like, if there's an advantage, it's small. If it's, you got to have all your ducks in a row. It's not just which badge is on the car. It's going to be tight, real tight.
Let's go to a couple of great questions from our man Ed Joris, who's always sending in great questions. If only the host could pronounce the words he done sent in on the interwebs. Ed says, how much would a setup sheet help a team like McLaren when they're struggling? How much is one worth? Is it any good without the components to complement it? Love that question, because it speaks to a belief that one can go and acquire information from another team and have that, let's say it's quality information. Obviously, how's this? There are probably many teams that would be willing to sell you their info. They might not be the ones you want to get it from, but at least the ones that are doing better than you that you might want to acquire it from. If you were to acquire that, can you share with folks, Ben, how even if it's a Chevy team getting it from a Chevy team, Honda from Honda, bolting that onto your car does not mean your car will go that fast. There's a certain driver person who has driving preferences where that setup information may or may not complement their driving style.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's more than just that. Obviously, 100%. You're 100% right with driving style versus setup. I mean, I can tell you that like our 4 cars, none of them are exactly the same. They've all got different things that they like, and we all try each other's cars. And there's certain things drivers don't like about the other ones, right? And so that's one big key component. The other one is physically the car, the parts. Particularly like full-time IndyCar teams, such as like Team Penske, we rub on things and we try to make them as nice as we can. We do a lot of quality checking, and it's just because you put these 4 springs and these 4 dampers on the car and put the wing angles the way they are, might not be as fast because the physical car might not be as quick. The gearbox might not be as good. The uprights might not be as good. So it's more than just that.
And I won't name the team, I won't name the source, but can vouch for the quality of the information. A friend was telling me and talking about one or two cars that might not have qualified and observing it, waiting in the line to roll into tech just before qualifying, LCQ qualifying on Sunday, and noticing that I'm not saying you could stick your whole finger through the gaps in the bodywork, but there were some very obvious things where you go, even if you've never been to Indy before, if you spent 5 minutes on the interweb reading a story from me, our friend David Malsher, plenty of other folks, where they talk about this wacky thing called body fit and how it can make a lot of difference in performance. This knowledge of what matching the minimum level of preparation needs to be to succeed here, that's not top secret. And yet, some of the cars rolling out, and at least one, if not two, that did not make the show, were visibly underprepared. Yeah. In those cases, you go, look, Roger Penske could personally hand-deliver a gold-embossed setup sheet that Ben Bretzman and Simon Pagenaud came up to win the pole. It's not going to get you in the show if you've got a little drag monster that's just acting like a parachute going down the straight.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, I think if you look at Alonso's onboard from Saturday to Sunday, it looks a lot more composed on Sunday, and he went quicker on Sunday, but it is draggy. So it's just, they haven't done the uprights correctly, or they haven't done the bearings, or, everything down to the body fit. I mean, I think you guys at Penske and at Carpenter Racing, when you look at that, I mean, sometimes if you see on the camera, it's like you can't even see the body panels. It's like they're, glued to each other. So there's a lot to that, and I can only imagine if you see that on the outside, I can only imagine how do you, connect seams on the inside, in radiator to be able to block off as much as possible to, make it go through the air as quickly as possible. So, yeah, I can imagine that for someone that's completely lost, that there's probably some benefit to saying, okay, no, we know this setup works so that the car won't try to kill you, but then there's probably the last mile and a hour, 2 mile an hour that's rubbing, and
there's handling versus speed.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we look at the numbers of what kept Fernando Alonso out a zillionth of a mile per hour percentage of just these infinitesimal numbers, you go, yep. That's where the friction reduction in name the component on the car done to this one, got it in, that one lacking it. Not saying that alone caused it, but it's the 100 little things that add up to we missed it by a small fraction. I just love having you guys here because you guys, I'm going to let you answer some of the stuff I normally answer on a week-to-week basis. Mike Jablow says to either of you, because I'm making it for either of you, please explain the center of pressure, COP, which folks hear on the broadcast, COP, and how it differs from the center of gravity.
This is a good way to actually do this. Anders was a former driver. So what happens when you have too much COP on the front of the car on an oval?
The rear will go bye-bye.
The rear will get to the corner before the front of the car.
You will not feel safe going into the corner. Yes.
Basically, what it is it's a balance of aero load on the car. So it basically goes in line with what the weight distribution of the car is. So, for instance, IndyCar weight distributions, anywhere from 42 to 44%, depending on what your wheelbase is and how you do your skids and your ballast in the car, and your aero balance kind of goes with that to keep the car physically balanced around a radius, essentially. And you're just balancing how much load you're putting on the front tires versus how much load you're putting on the rear tires. And that's what you see during races. You see guys doing a lot of front wing changes as the track grips up. Typically, you've got a bigger rear tire than a front tire. As the track grips up, you usually pick up more rear grips. You have to keep putting more front balance in the car to try to keep up with the racetrack, and that's what they call COP, or aero balance.
And I have a follow-up question to this question, which was a great question, by the way.
And I have a question about your question when you're done asking him about the question.
This is a good day. So I guess what I want to know is, obviously this year you have the front wing extension and you have the wicker, and I've been trying to get an answer on how much of that is changing the COP and how much of that is just physically helping the air reattach in dirty air. So I mean, have you guys been able to figure out exactly what that picture looks like?
I think so. I think all the teams on pit lane this week have been running different front wing parts. Testing, not only doing solo runs, but also in traffic. How does the car operate in traffic? How does the front wing perform in traffic? And some of that's driver preference. You'll see guys load up one side of the wing, make the wing asymmetric because they want more load on the left side of the car, try to get the left front tire to work more, or they're just trying to keep the left side of the car out from underneath the car in front of them. Other guys want a more balanced wing because it operates better if you're, say, crossing through a wake, or it just keeps the front of the car a bit more controlled. It's helped us because last year we kind of were out of front wing power. Last year there was two things that happened. There's basically a Firestone brought a tire that maybe needed a little bit more front grip for the last year's Indy 500. So this year they brought a tire that had more front grip, which has helped the racing so far a good amount. But the other issue was we had a lot of angle in the front wing because we were trying to make up for this lack of front tire power. So now we've been able to kind of recenter the wing now and get the wing in a better working position with the parts. And it's really up to your team and how you analyze the data on what you think best parts, because there's a ton of combinations now. You can run inboard extensions, you can run these outboard extensions that have little wickers, you can run little wickers on the inboard extension. So there's a lot of different ways to run it. And it's just really how you process the data is what you believe is right.
While we were speaking, I got a cool email telling me that I'll be interviewing Damon Hill in a day or two.
Oh, that's
How
cool.
is
Yeah,
that?
so I'm gonna ask him to explain the difference between COP and COG. I would say, Mike, the simplest way to understand it is if you are sitting in the car, center of gravity is measuring the height of the car's predominant weight and rotation, and we won't get into polar moments of inertia and all that kind of stuff, but center of gravity is basically just think of weight and where it is top to bottom in the car. If you're talking center of pressure, that's a fore and aft thing, and where the center of downforce, the real major portion of where that downforce is pushing down on the car, is located. So in maybe an even simpler form, you can think of it like brake bias. The brake bias knob will adjust whether the front brakes bite more, or you twist the knob back and it'll make the rear brakes do more of the work. Center of pressure, same exact thing. And it's not just through here where at the speedway where you see really only the front wing adjusters that can be done during a pit stop, but on a road course and whatnot, a lot of choices on wing, the flap angles at the front, the rear, lots of stuff that can be done. And it's not just helping the car to turn and perform, it's just, do we need a little bit more COP up front or at the rear to make the driver happy? So that's at least the way I think of it. And I'm so good at it, as I tell folks, that's why I'm only entrusted with a keyboard today.
Or to put it really simply, how much front grip you got?
Yeah.
You got too much or you got too little?
Let's see. Great stuff. I love people's memories. They're so much better than mine, Ben. Stephen Lake says, years ago I read somewhere, probably Racer Magazine, thanks for the plug, that Team Penske had discovered in the wind tunnel that their sponsored decals were creating micro disturbances over the car. To rectify that issue, Team Penske painted the sponsor logos and clear-coated the car. How are the cars currently done? Are they indeed painted and clear-coated? Are there other methods, one that's maybe more preferential than the others? I think Steven's actually referring to something that started in the 70s with Team Penske.
Yeah, well, there's actually a couple different ways to do it nowadays. But yes, certainly that's one of the big speedway prep things is how do you, again, we could talk about little things of drag. It all adds up. If you can imagine the size of a sticker, you have a bunch of these stickers stuck around the race car, it might add up to, 0.1, 0.2 pounds of drag. Not much, but hey, it's something. And so we're scraping the bottom of the barrel for everything we can possibly get. So you'll see a lot of teams, most of at least the medium and bigger teams, they're painting the cars and painting with decals on. So it's an ultra smooth finish. And then you can basically go in and polish that smooth finish, and you've got basically a nothing will stick to it situation. So it's a pretty big deal. it just gets down to the details at the end of the day.
I know I'm repeating this story here on the podcast, so I apologize, dear listeners, but I'm sharing this with Anders and Ben who aren't aware. It's perfect on this topic too, Stephen. So I'm holding up a sticker, the decal of the Robin Miller one that Toronto Motorsports done. And so we know that on Sunday, Kyle Kaiser's Juncos Racing, number 32 Chevy, will indeed have a little bit of extra aero drag because it wasn't a bet, but I said, all right, Juncos, if you make the race, you got to carry a Robin Miller sticker since this is the 50th anniversary of his covering his very first 500.
Nice.
So Ricky, being the fine, upstanding person, said yes. So
awesome.
If they don't have a great day, we're staring at the reason right now. It's the effing Robin Miller sticker done, shot their entire thing down. All right, let's go to a little bit of Twitter, and then I think we're going to close with the mighty Reddit, and then we're going to let you guys just continue your tour of sexiness all on your own. Let's see, where shall we go here? Right Turn Lover, you are getting input here from Switzerland.
Ooh.
No question.
Hello, if he gets.
Just an appreciation of Anders' great insights on the radio coverage of Saturday Quali. Said he only got the last hour of the stream. # more Anders, please. Wow, that is the first time a human being has ever actually uttered those words.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm still waiting for someone to say more MP, please. So you're a lap up on me, brother. So,
hashtag.
Here's a general question. Ryan Terpstra. Ryan always sends in some great stuff. He says, for anybody, did you see the article by Jenna Fryer, who hasn't? Great, again, great work.
Oh, yeah.
About the litany of errors McLaren made. Any thoughts from y'all about whether that might hurt, or I shouldn't say help, but just strictly hurt their chances of bringing a more serious effort, possibly on the ovals in the future? What do you think? Because this is a fight or flight thing, right? Do we come back and show them that wasn't us, or do you go, yeah?
The only thing I can think is that I think from a team perspective, they still want to do it. I think it's more from a partnership perspective, whether all the partners that they probably use this as like their seduction weekend, if you will, to get sponsors finalized for the next couple of years. And I'm not sure if that would have impacted them. Maybe they've managed to sell those partners on, well, this is why we are going full-time, because then we will be a strong effort. But I can certainly imagine some people being disillusioned from a partnership perspective on, we put all this money in for the 500 and you're not in the show. So I'd be interested to know what the sales pitch is there. But I think from a team perspective and from a brand perspective, McLaren's realizing that their biggest marketplace is America. They have limited opportunities in America with F1 to put on events. So I think they need to be in the IndyCar series from an automotive perspective. But I know that they don't want to do anything that negatively impacts the IndyCar or the F1 team from a financial or engineering perspective. So to me, it comes down to dollars and cents on if they can fully fund this program, and has that been affected by them not making it into the show. I would think it'd be that easy, but I don't know what you guys have heard.
The other one is in the short, 1 or 2 year short term. Does Fernando want to do this again like that? And how do you prove to him that it's not going to be like that?
Yeah,
that's going to have, if you want Fernando to be the driver to do this, how are you going to prove to him what's the next step?
Yeah. One of my first immediate thoughts was, how long until Michael Andretti, Ed Carpenter, whomever, reaches out to Fernando and says, hey,
they better have called him yesterday.
No,
I'm actually serious.
If you still want to do this, don't have anything for you this year. Yeah. But having seen what you can do, right?
Yeah.
Look, and with your name attached, we're fairly confident we can raise the pick. Look, let's talk salary later. If you really want to come back and do this, we know we can raise the money to fund the running of the vehicle. The profit side for you, again, the guy's quadrillionaire, but that was my first takeaway. Would I love to see McLaren back? Absolutely. Something additive to the sport, more cars. Who wouldn't want to see that? Do I necessarily think if McLaren were to come back next year, there's an automatic tie with Fernando Alonso? I think Fernando is going to be the one to tell us that.
Mm-hmm. I would love to see them if they did that, and it seems like if they do it, they're going to do a 2-car program to take one experienced IndyCar driver and maybe bring someone that's been on their junior development program from Europe, so that you kind of have someone that you can grow with as your team improves, because I think that'd be the problem with Fernando is, to your point, I don't think he'd want to be the development driver for 2 years. He wants to step into something where he can win. So to your point, if I'm Fernando, I'm calling Ed Carpenter right now, trying to lock down that third car for the 500 next year, no question. Because, I mean, he's basically I suppose Andretti as well, they have their fifth car, but those are the only two teams that can just add a car, and do a good job of it. So if he wants to win the 500, I think that's the only solution he's got.
Okay, let's get down to our last couple of questions here. Henry Erbach, a great one. We get stuff like this, month of May in particular. I'm the worst one to answer. It says, congratulations, Ben, on winning the poll. This is for all three of you, but I'm going to make it the two of you. Where and what do you guys go to eat when you're in Indy? Ooh. Also, how often are fluids drained and replaced and analyzed? What I love about your question, Henry, is there was really no transition in between. So I don't know if you're referring to where do we eat and then when do we drain our fluids. I was going to ask that question. And actually, I don't know if I want anyone to analyze mine. But assuming the last one was about the car, where should we go here, gents?
I always check my fluids after going to the state fair here. I'll start with the easy one. I lived here for a few years before moving out to Indy, but mainly up on the northwest side. I go to the Friendly Tavern in Zionsville. It's kind of my favorite little spot up there. So.
Yeah, I've been there a few times, but I live downtown, so there's a few really good places that have come up lately. But
Applebee's,
Applebee's and Chili's. No, there's actually one place that's just by my place and my office called Livery, which is a fantastic tapas-style place.
There you go.
It is beautiful. And then there's a place down in Fountain Square called Bluebeard. And so I'd probably have to pick those two because they are, and they will make you change your fluids right away as well. So
I always, again, it's just because you have to. It's almost like going and seeing some sort of tragedy that is still standing. I just tell everyone to go to the Mug and Bun. And as I tell folks, the good thing is you will be saving money on 10W40 for the rest of your life. You will be topped up forever. Your body will retain every ounce of grease and oil there. You won't believe that people actually go there on a nightly basis. It's kind of a very slow, progressive form of suicide, I guess you can say. Okay. I want to kill myself. 30 years, though. This one's going to pay out a bit. Yeah, that's kind of the classic one. And when I was still drinking sodas and things with sugar in them, the homemade root beer at the Mug and Bun, I don't know if root beer is a thing. It's a very American thing, but theirs, I'm telling you, it's the best. Me, no. You and I are going to come up with a bet someday. I fear what you're going to come up and make me do, but I think if you lose, it would be to drink a gallon of Mug and Bun root beer.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I feel like Robin Miller's tried to pull me there a few times, but I've just never...
It's not a surprise that there's a man on the street right in front of you selling packages of adult diapers. There's an actual cause and effect here. All right, let's get down to the last couple of here. Great one from Henri Fawn. It says, Ben, how does a team approach rebuilding a car overnight after a crash? He says you can bring in lots of people, but there's only so much space to work around a car. How do you make sure you're not in each other's way, you don't miss anything? Is it checklists, compartmentalized tasks? It's a great procedural question.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, the first part's honestly prep. Do you have a spare gearbox built? Do you have spare uprights built? Do you have things on the ready to be replaced, essentially? Do you have engine kit to be able to address an engine? What parts are available? That's the first step in the whole. You have to be prepared. Then beyond that, if you need to do a thrash turnaround, this may sound like the simple answer, but we have a lot of experienced mechanics. They have checklists. Everybody's got a checklist of things that they have to go through. But if you're doing a deal, say, which has happened, I don't know, a handful of times the last 10 years to me, you'll have at Texas, get done with practice one and you'll blow your motor up and you got to be in the qualifying line in an hour. And there's no time for checklists. It's all hands on deck and
pray lists and hymns.
That's why they're professionals. So that's the easy answer, but being prepared, having parts on the ready is the key. And having very experienced guys is very helpful. And, if you've got time, we've got certain checklists on car builds and how it works. There's, you have on a standard IndyCar team, you've got guys that work on the front end, guys that work on the rear end, guys that kind of work in the middle of the car and the engine dress. And if there's all hands on deck from multiple cars, those groups all stay together and they're used to working together. So guys, you'll have guys bolting each corner on just because they're used to doing it, and it's easy to get going. So experience is a big deal, and being prepared.
Let's see. I think we had one here which I felt like we really needed to answer. William Matson said, "Hey, Marshall, any updates on Juncos' sponsorship situation since they made the show?" And then, of course, these are my listeners. Maybe Views, Ghost Smile, and Mission wouldn't mind a change from orange to green. William, you know my kind of mean, snarky sense of humor. Still haven't gotten the tally from Ricardo, but I am told that the number of total sponsors signed is north of 30.
Wow.
That's good.
I wish I could say they were all at $1 million apiece. That'd be pretty cool. Roger would be calling Ricardo asking, what's your secret?
Yeah.
I don't know what the number is financially, but if you've got 30 sponsors, those have to add up to hopefully a couple $100,000.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Then you factor in the cost of the crash itself. I don't know their terms. I don't know their deals. It's not unfamiliar, though, if you have someone like a Kyle Kaiser who, successful father in terms of business and such, who might be the person to take care of that bill. You'd hate to see a team have this great story, bring in a bunch of money, but it's already spent because you're paying for the wreck. So hopefully things work out where the crash is covered and whatever's come in can be profit. So that would be pretty awesome. I know this is going to shock you. This McLaren team that we keep hearing rumors of, there's about 40 different questions asked many different ways. Let's take one more question on McLaren, and then let's close on Sunday, what we think we might see. We'll make some bets here. We shouldn't ask the guy who's in the race to do any of that, but at least he can vouch for whether one of us is the dumber
he can nod
or the other.
or shake his head
the high
feverishly.
Sign. Why do you have 4 overtake buttons on the steering wheel, Ben? All right, never mind. Here's one, and maybe it's a little bit slightly related to McLaren, maybe not. IndyCar 1701 from Reddit says, where does the carnage from this weekend leave the prospects for Carlin's future? It says the team seems to be stuck in reverse since Pagenaud's first race at COTA. That's an interesting take. Having 3 or 4 Carlin-prepared cars miss the show, and having only Carlin-prepared cars miss the show at all, I can't help but think the ripple effects might be felt for some time, and then mentions a few other things. It's a question I've had and raised of Max Chilton's father, Chili Chilton, big reason and portion of the funding matrix there. If Max is no longer wanting to be here, does that mean the IndyCar team might be in jeopardy? Max has actually said the opposite. I'm going to come back and keep fighting, which I loved hearing from him. But any thoughts on how a team like Carlin might have struggled across multiple cars when we know Max can drive around here? We've seen him do it. He led 50 laps 2 years ago. Pato, that kid's not afraid of anything. He's flat out the whole time. How does this happen, guys?
I guess the biggest question mark I raised in something like that is you look at a Charlie Kimball who qualifies 20th and is super strong. So the first thing I'm going to look for is, are there any discrepancies in how the car's been built? Has there been, one universal method of building all the cars, or has he had one specific crew and the same methodology hasn't been applied to the other cars? Because I think he was obviously easily in the show. I think Pato in his first car would have probably been fairly comfortably in the show. So then it was just kind of Max who was, and Alonso obviously, but that's maybe a little bit of a different case. Then it's just the two of them kind of on the outside looking in. So I guess from a resource perspective, that's probably where someone like you at Team Penske, where you can ensure that every single car is built to the exact same spec, whereas this team who quickly went from a 2-car effort to now a 4-car effort, maybe they've been a little bit more diluted across the board, and suddenly they don't have that chance, so it's maybe left up to chance a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's most of it, honestly. I feel bad for Trevor because
he's the best.
That wasn't really great what happened on Sunday to him, but it's extremely hard. Even for me, is like being a Team Penske, right? We have a lot of resources to make sure our cars are fast. It's a lot of work to get just this little bit of gap that we have to the cars in the back. And it's not big anymore. You look at last year to this year, the gap is extremely small.
You had to do extraordinary things to beat Ed Carpenter Racing, and that's not disrespecting Ed, just
100%.
saying, folks think of Team Penske all dominating. You go, no.
We've worked our tails off the last 3 years just to try to beat Ed Carpenter Racing here. And it's a lot of work. And if 100%, if you can spread yourself out too thin if you're not careful, parts on the car and the quality of parts and doing the quality checks on all the parts, understanding what you really have. It's got to be super detailed. And if you spread yourself out, it's not easy.
I did have one thought this morning, and there's some caveats in here. Obviously, Charlie.
Some caviar? Is that
yes,
what
I love
wonderful.
it. Beluga is my favorite with
nice.
ketchup on it. Charlie was fast enough to get in, not quick, but was there.
Comfortable-ish.
Pato, we think, would have been thereabouts. Max was struggling, to a bit of a surprise. I did wonder if the different off-season than Carlin had intended has had any knock-on effect. When they came in last season, two-car, full season, both entries, we know a lot about where they focused their priorities and how that affected their season. They focused a ton on aero, not on the damping side. That actually paid dividends here. Both cars were quick. Part of me wonders if going into the off-season, I mean, Trevor said to me, and I think some others fairly early on into the off-season, we're not 100% sure of what next year is or isn't going to be. We knew that Charlie's money had been trimmed back. Questions, maybe unfounded, as to whether Max was going to want to keep doing this. Pato wasn't on anyone's radar. Just as teams, as you guys know, when you're thinking off-season, where do I spend my R&D budget for next year?
Yeah.
How do I apportion it for what? Everyone, of course, knows how important Indy is, but if you're not sure if you're running any cars, one maybe, you find out, okay, it's going to be one full season, 1-5. Again, I think there might be something to, we're not staring at a ton of cash. Are we just going to throw it at the 500 when we can't really vouch for who all is going to be there with us? Yeah. I'm not saying that's it, but it did occur to me.
There's something to that. I mean, we start our R&D development like next week. It's an always going process. So, if you don't know what you're doing, it's hard to, you don't know what you're doing going in the future, right? It's hard to commit too much there.
All right, so I do have one question here I missed that I would not forgive myself if I skipped it before we get to final thoughts on the upcoming weekend. This comes in from Danny Nohops, who says, for Anders, and you're going to have to tell the backstory, what ingredients go into a Caterham Marussia? I've been experimenting and woke up with my cat on the floor licking the blender.
All right. Yeah, that does have a bit of backstory. So that was Robin Miller and I during one of the practice days on air.
And he doesn't drink, but he sure sounded drunk.
Yeah. And basically we were going through Alexander Rossi's career to this point. We were going through the F1 teams that he'd been with. And, I mentioned that, he'd been with Caterham and Marussia. And Robin Miller says, well, really? That sounds like a bad drink. so anyways, then social media kind of took off a little bit. And people started saying that they went to their local watering hole to have a Caterham Marussia. So based on how disgusting it sounds, I probably have to say it's probably a combination of rum, Norwegian akavit, and maybe like a Coke, vanilla Coke or something really disgusting.
Diet.
Yeah.
Oof. A Diet Mr. Pibb vanilla.
And, definitely something you would black out on, though, after one drink, for sure. A Caterham Marussia, you do not want to get mixed up with that.
If you were in front of the judge, having just committed heinous crimes, and told them that I had 3 Caterham Marussias, they go,
you're
insanity,
good.
he's out.
Yeah, you're good.
But I'm thinking, knowing that I'm guessing we'll be on pit lane on Friday for Carb Day.
I'll be in the booth for the Indy Lights stuff, actually.
Okay,
yeah,
but in theory, you should be around. I'm just saying, since this is attached to Rossi, you should at least ask him.
Very good point.
This should be, give him your thoughts.
Yep.
They sound like we've got some alternates here. A Diet Fanta something. Again, who knows? But yeah, maybe Rossi needs to weigh in, since it's kind of inspired by his, I would say Formula One career, but it's some bunny quotes here. All right, we've killed this thing as usual. All right, Sunday, I've heard there's a motor race we're going to be coming back to. Any thoughts, Ben, on what fans might look for, knowing that you guys help make folks a little smarter, clue them into some things? What are some ideas you have? You go, hey, if you're going to be watching, keep an eye out for this or that.
Well, I think, one, the racing's going to be generally better than it was last year. Cars can follow closer. You can generally pass if you're in the first few cars. If it happens to be cool, I think you'll see it really stacked up on each other. I think it's going to be a pack race speedway style. If it's warmer, like the temperature keeps going up and down. We're not 100% sure what it's going to be just yet, but if it's warmer and the sun's out, I think that's when you'll see the cars kind of start to separate themselves and drivers start to separate themselves. I think it's going to be a good race. The tow effect is massive right now, and the drivers have enough front end now to be able to finish laps and finish passes and really suck up well with this car now. You kind of had to watch yourself last year because you basically didn't have enough front end to finish a lot of the big runs you'd get, and now basically really making use of this aero kit and what it is at the speedway. So, you look at Simon was quickest yesterday in Monday practice. I mean, he wasn't flat in any of the four corners, like massive lifts, but he did a 228 because the toe-up effect is massive.
Yeah.
So you'll see big runs. You're going to see really big runs of cars behind. You're going to see a lot of interesting things happen from that standpoint. I think it's going to be a good show. I think we're going to put on a really good show here. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to watch just as much as you guys.
Anders is a fellow analyst.
Oh, dear.
Yes. Share some thoughts on 1 or 2, 3 candidates for the win.
Yep.
1 or 2 candidates for big surprise. Might not the win, but someone where you go, ooh, I think that's going to be someone folks are remembering after this race. And third component, anyone you think we might be going home saying, oh, boy, we almost didn't know they were there, but we thought we would.
Well, yeah, good question.
And if Simon Pagenaud's answers to all, Ben's going to punch you.
I think just kind of going off of what you guys said, I think what blew us all away last year is the relatively how slow race pace was and how much time was spent off throttle, and because of that, pit window is much, much bigger than they were in years past, and I think it caught a lot of people that weren't necessarily 100% in the running a little bit by surprise by how long they could pull their windows. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see some people rolling the dice a bit more like a Scott Dixon. If you're slightly out of it, then maybe a little bit earlier in the race than you did last year, do you go off sequence and you go off strategy and you say, you know what, let's roll the dice. That's the only way we're going to win it here. And I think you're no longer locked to that lap 30. You're coming in lap 30 no matter what. There's a much bigger disparity there. If race pace is slow-ish as it was last year with the amount of lifting that you have to do. So I think that's certainly part of it. I think just raceability, I completely agree with you. Obviously, Team Penske cars look really good. I think Elio Castroneves, mechanically looking and confidence-wise in the car, Alexander Rossi, I know, surprise, surprise, to me, he crosses over the aero wake better than anyone else, and it looks like he's willing to drive a car that's much more positive than anyone else. And so I think because of that, he can follow more closely than anyone else. And so I think if it is a hot and humid day and kind of following closely, is at a premium, I think he could really, have a strong chance. With that said, throughout practice week, the person I feel like I talk the most about is Santino Ferrucci. He is,
yes,
and I don't know if that's because of lack of fear or lack of respect for the place, but he was one of the only other drivers, in addition to Rossi, that could follow very, very closely. He could time runs on people, and the timing of runs isn't necessarily something that just comes to you right away. It's sort of it takes experience, but it seemed to come to him fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of jump up and be in contention, throughout the course of the race. But again, I think with how difficult this is, I could very easily see it being sort of a race of comers and goers, where you have someone fading early on, where they're waiting for the track to come to them as the track temp and ambient comes up. number one guy for that typically is Scott Dixon, someone that has never been too concerned with the first 100 laps of the race, but just kind of slowly but surely gets the car to his liking.
He's related to some guy who might know about this sitting next to you, by the
way. That Scott Dixon guy.
Yeah, that guy. What about surprise and what about disappointment?
So again, surprise, I think the Santino Ferrucci one.
You're locked in there. Okay,
could be a very good one. Disappointment's difficult, man. Like, I know that there's been a couple of the Andretti guys that haven't been entirely happy with their race car. I know Marco was varying levels of unhappy throughout practice with his car. There's maybe a little bit of a question mark over Ryan Hunter-Reay. I would say from a team perspective, there's probably been a bigger disparity between them than I've seen in a Team Penske or Ed Carpenter Racing, who all look kind of somewhat happy. So maybe that can be a surprise in a good way or in a terrible way for them. We don't quite know yet. But certainly from if it's like a green flag race and it's all about pace, no question the Team Penske or Ed Carpenter car is winning this race.
Coming into the month, I had a feeling that we would be looking at either an Alejandro Rossi or Joseph Newgarden win. I would not be displeased if anybody won. No, that's a lie. There's one or two that wouldn't make me too happy. But
okay,
Simon Pagenaud win wouldn't make me. That would be amazing for him, knowing what it means to him, because you get that in every winner. You find out very quickly, does this fulfill something deep inside of you, or does this victory now create that real first hardcore appreciation of what it means to win? Simon, I think, is the first category of he knows, and if this were to happen, this would just be fairy tale achievement for him. But I would say Rossi, Newgarden, I just think there's going to be something there in terms of possible win. In terms of surprise, I think our boy, surprise in terms of the weekend not being the month, not everything that he wanted. I think Oriol Servia might do something. Marcus Ericsson, too, has just been, wow, he looks like a guy who understands this place, even as a rook. Disappointment, I'm going to go with Felix Rosenqvist. And obviously, he had his crash. Obviously, set him back a little bit. I had a feeling he was going to make another demonstration that this is next generation holy poop, stand back. Just something tells me it might be next year. This year might have put him in a place where, again, love to see that change, but I'm not totally sure that's going to play out that way.
I can see the race for him being one of those where he just gets negative momentum on his side and it just goes from bad to worse. But I can also see it be one of those a couple of stints in where something clicks and suddenly he's like, I get it now. And I don't think he's had that epiphany yet of I get it. And then I want to end on just saying that this Simon Pagenaud guy has a tendency of once he gets on a run, he tends to not stop. 2016.
I remember a season not too long ago where he made it not fun for others to come to the party.
That's the goal.
The goal. Think about this, Ben. You and I are going to remember this day because this will be the last time that we have Anders Krohn on a podcast before I have to go through agents, PR reps, right? We've got the rising star here of IndyCar awesome broadcasting. Kidding aside, I love you guys. Really appreciate you taking some time here on a late and rainy Wednesday to do nothing but share your passion and knowledge with IndyCar fans, which is kind of sort of all we're really trying to do here. So thanks for coming out.
No, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. It's been awesome. Can't wait.
He's lying straight to my face. You see that, Ben? And thank you to Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers for their awesomeness. And also, please, if you are here in Indy, come to the Memorabilia Show Saturday morning, right behind the pagoda in the little, the pavilion area there, where our friends at TorontoMotorsports.com are doing their pop-up show. One day only. Now, I'm about to tell you a lie and tell you that it starts at 9. Don't come until 9. It may or may not start a little bit earlier. I just want to make sure you, dear listeners, aren't there, so I get the first crack at all the memorabilia I want. So a little bit of self-serving. All kidding aside, thanks for listening in. It's been really fun doing these Day at Indies as well. Folks have been enjoying lots of folks sitting down here on the good old Marshall Pro podcast.